Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Good, and this channel is all about a game I'm working on called A Struggle to Survive, which is a 2D survival game set in 1700s America. Thanks for joining me today. I've titled this video Timber, and that's because I've been able to make some progress in the last couple of days on the Flora engine, and I want to show basically the progress I've made. And this map is ridiculously void of trees where I am. So I'm going to stop and replay. Let's give this another whirl. Much better. All right. So a couple of things I want to show you today. First off, those of you that watched my previous video will notice that the little skill book for nature has been removed. My original idea with that was that if you could go up to any of the flora in the game, and if you took the time to click on that button that showed the little book, that it would basically cycle through and give you an opportunity to gain some extra skill, a little bonus skill. Those of you that played EverQuest 2, you'll remember going out and harvesting. And sometimes when you harvest a node, you'd get that wonderful sound, bling sound of a bonus where you picked up a rare item. This is kind of similar to that, and that's what I want to try to have, opportunities for bonuses and for rares and different things like that. In this particular implementation, it would just be to gain additional nature skill. And then I got to thinking about it, talking to my wife about it, and I realized that, rather than make it something that the player has to proactively do, let's make it a passive thing, just like in EverQuest 2, where it was passive. You didn't think about it, and then it suddenly happened. And so that's what I've done. Basically, I took the book off the action bar here, and instead, for every action that you can do with Flora, it will give you, if it's a successful action, it'll give you an opportunity, a chance to get that. So in this video, you might hear that. You might hear that little ding, indicating a bonus in nature skill. So I made that change. Another thing I did is created a new bucket texture. That's my new bucket. I think that looks much more like a bucket. And I even added a little tab there so you could see where you would tap the bucket to the tree. Those look a lot nicer. The other bucket looked like a bucket, but something about it just didn't quite look like a bucket. It did close up, but not zoomed out, and I wanted to just clean that up a little bit. So anytime I have an opportunity to put in some graphics that are nicer, I freely do that, because that is, I think the way the game looks is very, very important. So I've added that. I've also added sap collection. Now, if you watched my previous video, you saw that, I could tap, this is a maple tree. I could tap the maple tree, and if I didn't hit a knot like that one there, then I would be able to tap, put a bucket on. I'm going to leave that little guy there for a second. Come down, see if I can find a bigger tree. And so that one doesn't have any sap. That one doesn't either. And there went my cuckoo clock. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see if we can tap this guy. Still nothing. Still nothing. Still nothing. Yeah, you're probably wondering why I don't turn off that feature of a chance of failing to tap. And the reason is because as I'm playing and testing and developing, I want to feel the frustrations of the player. I I don't want to make it easy for myself. I want to, and I may change my mind if I don't find a tree with some sap. But I want to experience the game the way I'm developing it. And if there's a feature that is overly frustrating for the player, then I want to catch it while I'm developing. Okay, here we go. All right, so tap the tree. Got my bucket there. Now, in the previous video, I could do that. I could tap a tree, drop the bucket, and that's basically all it did. What I've added in the last 2 days is basically a sap collection mechanism. And so before, when you put the bucket on the tree, the bucket would, leave inventory, which is correct, right? But the bucket would disappear from the actions list because you currently cannot place more than one bucket. And yet, looking at this tree, we see that there's a bucket still in the action bar. And the reason for that is because now the bucket doesn't represent tapping the tree, it represents removing the bucket from the tree. So same action icon, but a different function. And you'll also notice that it is 2.47% full right now. Now I can leave that and go do something else. But what I want to mention here in this feature is that I don't have a timer running for that bucket. There's nothing running for that bucket specifically, okay? So if I come back over here and I check the bucket, you can see it's now 5.73. And I can go do other things, and I can come back later, and when it is full, I can take it off the tree, or I could take it off if it wasn't full. But my point is that this tree and this bucket doesn't have a timer. Now, how did I do that? How did I implement that? Well, it's very simple. The game has a tick time. So game ticks is collected and stored in a singleton, and every 2 seconds the game ticks one time. And what I ended up doing with the game placement of the bucket is I added to the bucket definition, and more specifically the flora instance, a time reference based on the global time. So when I went over and put that bucket on the tree, I went to the singleton and said, what time is it? What tick time is it? And I recorded that tick time on that tree instance. So when I go and check the tree, all I'm doing is a calculation. I went ahead and removed it. What I'm doing there is a calculation of the time that it was set to the current time. Now, right now, this is an empty bucket, this is potable water. Here we go. Here's the sap. So the amount of sap that's collected is basically a teaspoon every game tick. Now, a game tick is, right now it's 346. Every game tick is a minute in the game. So every minute in game time produces 1 teaspoon of sap. And basically it'll sit there and it'll collect, but it's really not collecting. All it's doing is sitting there. But when I click on it and I check the bucket to see, it does an immediate calculation at that moment and tells me how much is in the bucket. Now, I managed to collect in that short amount of time 89 teaspoons or 89 ticks of the game. That's how long the bucket stayed on the tree. Now, and I managed to get 11, almost 12% maple sap. And that's how I implement it. And walking off of the view, walking outside of this view to another place in the map doesn't matter. When I come back, I instantiate the tree. The tree already has the reference to the time that I placed the bucket, and I just simply calculate. So you don't always need a timer for things. Sometimes you can just store a reference to a global time on your object and then do some simple math to come up with a result that you might want to see. So we have a new bucket texture. We have this mechanic now to collect sap and to recover the sap back into inventory. And another thing that we have is another feature I added was, let's say the bucket sits there and I run off and I forget about it and I come back later. And you might wonder, well, if you do the math, a bucket holds a liquid capacity of 768. So, well, what happens if the math comes out to more than 768? Well, that's easy. If the math is greater, if the amount of sap collected, in other words, if the time that I place the bucket and the current time, if that math ends up creating more than 768 quantity or liquid capacity in that bucket, I just simply take the max from the definition of the bucket, the container. But if you leave it until it's full to the brim and you go to take it off, if it's full to the brim, there is a chance that you'll spill some of that liquid. And then when you do, it will tell you down here that you have spilled some. It's not much, but I thought it was a neat little mechanic that, you know, um, there's a chance that when you put it in your inventory, it's going to spill. There's also a chance that it won't spill. Now, if it doesn't spill, then you're automatically going to get that bonus ding that happens when you get some extra nature skill. So little things like that are, I think, what make the game interesting and fun and unexpected. Having things that happen unexpectedly. I think that adds to the depth of the game. Now, another thing that I implemented was tree chopping. So we have the ability now to chop down a tree. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the tree chop and then show you a couple of things. All right, I haven't added the logs yet, but I do want to talk about this tree chop because this was really fun to work on. So the animation is actually, I'm not using an animator. I'm using a tween to tween the tree from its vertical position to its horizontal position when it falls. There are currently three different age groups of trees. You have young, mature, and old. And so for each one of the trees, based on their age, the fall sound is going to be different. A tree that's much, an old like this one is going to have a different sound, but also there's up to 4 different chopping sounds. The chopping sounds are random, and it's just another way to add some variation to the game. So I added that, and also there is a reference to the player. So in other words, here I am, I'm on the right side of the tree. If I click on the tree and I go to chop, the tree's going to bounce a little bit to the left, and it's going to fall to the left. But if I'm on the left side of the tree, which here's another one, let's do this one. It's going to bounce a little bit to the right, and it'll fall to the right. Now, I think the animation is really, really smooth with the tree fallings. Let me give you another. Let me do a smaller tree. You can see, or you can hear the See, it's a little quicker to chop down, different sound. Then this guy is what this one is. All right. So when I was working on the tween, and what I'm going to do is let me stop the game. I want to show you something here, and I'll leave a link in the description to what I'm about to describe. But the out-of-the-box tween that comes with Godot, it's good, but it doesn't always give us what we're looking for. All right. So, the default tween, I'm gonna do a rotation of the flora from 0, which is straight up, down to a degree destination based on what side of the tree I'm on, either 90 or -90. And then I have my tween time. So I just have this predefined list of tween types. And so we have a very finite list of tween types. We have a finite list of tween easings. And when I was trying to get this to work with the default tween, it just wasn't looking like I needed it to look. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I chop this down, watch what happens. Now, that bounce is just not right. And another thing about the default tween, and I believe it has something to do with the timing of the tween, waiting long enough for the signal to come back that the tween has been completed. When that signal doesn't hit just right, it actually doesn't continue with the rest of the actions that I have coded. So the tree stays. A couple of other things that happen after the tweening stops doesn't actually take place. So it's buggy, and I can debug, I can deal with bugs, but the actual tweening effect just wasn't there. It doesn't look good. And so I ended up doing some research and Googling, and I found a resource. I found a guy who his name is Bramreth, and I'm going to leave a link in the description. Like I said, you can go take a look at his GitHub and actually pull this in. But he developed an extension to the tween that he calls CurveTween, and basically, yeah, I mean it's a very easy, simple um, extension. And what he does is he provides within the CurveTween, he provides the ability to set a curve yourself, to create a curve, rather than having the default tweens that come with the Godot engine. Using CurveTween, you can actually set the tween curve itself. And so once I implemented this, I went in and set the curve like I wanted it. And that gave me the effect that I needed. And so it's super easy to implement. Here's the code. You can implement it yourself if you are working on a game. But it's real easy and smooth. And so I ended up going with that instead of the default implementation of the tween. So now when I go back, I chop it down. It falls. There's an acceptable amount of bounce, and everything works. So my hat's off to him for his work in developing the CurveTween extension to the tween class in Godot. And yeah, it works really well. And and that's what happens. Sometimes you get into developing your game. If you're working on a game, you'll understand what I'm saying. Sometimes the out of the box implementation just really isn't perfect. It isn't what you need. You need to do something a little different. And this just goes to uh, this goes to show that the Godot community is so incredible. We've got this open source engine and so many people that are willing to figure things out, make things better, donate that to the community, and ultimately we all win. It's all it's a win-win for everyone, and I am very thankful for that. All right, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more of my game, A Struggle to Survive, you can check out my blog where I'm blogging my development, and of course you can subscribe to this channel and uh, walk along with me as I am building out this game. Thanks for watching. Until next time.